Hey, guys, have you ever seen anything like this before? We've all heard of Stonehenge and we know how old that is, right? Well, guess what? There's something older. It's not only older, but it'll blow your mind. This is called Göbekli Tepe, and it's considered to be the oldest temple in the world. The mind-blowing part about this is that it's older than Stonehenge and the pyramids. So let's explore the history behind this sacred site. Then we can find out who built it over 11,000 years ago. But first, if you love learning about mysterious archaeological finds, make sure to stay tuned for more updates. Now let's begin. So, Göbekli Tepe translates to Potbelly Hill in English, and it was discovered by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt in 1963. The site is located in southeastern Turkey, near the city of Sam. Excavations began here in 1994 and are still ongoing today. This is because there's so much to discover here. And it's incredible, because it tells us about a time when humans were hunter-gatherers. Most people think that settled societies with agriculture came before this way of life. However, Göbekli Tepe shows us that people had started to settle down earlier than we thought. It also shows us that religion was an important aspect of human society, much earlier than we thought. You see, temples don't just pop up. They usually have some sort of religious significance. People back then would have built these structures to worship gods or goddesses. It seems that around 11,500 years ago, people were living very similar lives all across the world. For example, they had similar beliefs, and they used tools made from flint and obsidian. This leads archaeologists to believe that maybe there was a connection between the people of Göbekli Tepe and other settlements like this. At first, this site didn't really seem that special. After all, they found things like animal bones and primitive tools here. These findings helped them date the site back to the Neolithic period. They believed that people lived here during the 10th and 7th millennia BC. However, they soon realized that there was more to this site than met the eye. They uncovered strange pillars that had been carved with geometric shapes and animals. This led them to question everything they thought they knew about early human civilization. You see, if Göbekli Tepe had been inhabited 11,000 years ago, then the people who lived here must have been a lot smarter than archaeologists had assumed. This is because they couldn't believe that hunter-gatherers could have built such a structure. However, there were even more amazing discoveries in store. As excavations continued, archaeologists uncovered more pillars, some that stood nearly 6 meters tall. Many of them had carvings of gazelles, bulls, lions, and snakes. However, they also found pillars with handprints and footprints. One pillar had a spiral design, and another one even showed a human hand holding a flower. These pillars were carefully arranged in circles, and they almost formed a kind of enclosure. At its largest, the site spanned over 30 acres. That's bigger than many religious sites today. Archaeologists also found signs that a large community of people lived here. This is because they found evidence of houses and other structures that suggest people lived here year. To make matters even more confusing, they found that people had lived here for thousands of years. It wasn't just occupied for a couple hundred years and then abandoned. People kept returning to this site long after their ancestors had built the temple. There was also evidence of people gathering here for ceremonies. Archaeologists found a circle of pillars near the entrance. It looks like this circle may have been used for rituals. Archaeologists believe that people would walk around this circle in ceremonies. They might have even sacrificed animals here. Then there were smaller enclosures that may have been used for burials. What's interesting is that these enclosures weren't used for very long. After a few hundred years, people stopped burying their dead here. Instead, they started scattering the cremated remains in caves nearby. What's crazy is that there are still many unanswered questions about this site. Archaeologists have no idea what happened here, why people stopped burying their dead here, where the people went that built these structures, and so much more. One theory is that climate change caused the people to abandon the settlement. As the Ice Age came to an end, temperatures rose and rain became more frequent. This made the land less hospitable and likely caused many of the plants and animals that the people relied upon to disappear. This would have caused them to wander from settlement to settlement, never staying in one place for too long. Another theory is that the people were forced to leave due to invaders. Archaeologists found evidence of violence at the site, including animal bones that had been smashed and skulls that had been fractured. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll uncover evidence that shows us what really happened. But one thing we do know is that Göbekli Tepe changed the way we look at early human civilization. It shows us that religion and monumental architecture developed earlier than we thought. It also shows us that people had begun to settle down before farming communities became widespread. This leads many archaeologists to wonder if farming came from religion. Maybe people built these religious structures and then needed a way to sustain themselves. So they started planting crops and raising livestock. This would explain why so many ancient religions have a creation story that revolves around plants and animals. But this is just a theory. Another theory is that humans domesticated animals before they settled down. So maybe it wasn't religion that inspired the start of farming, but rather a need for food. Some people have even suggested that there may have been a single culture that inspired similar settlements across the globe. As we mentioned earlier, people across the world seem to have similar beliefs and ways of life. So maybe there was an ancient culture that we haven't discovered yet. Maybe there was a mother culture that spread its knowledge to different groups of people. This could explain why we see similarities in the religions of cultures that aren't related. But of course, this is just a theory. After all, we don't know if Göbekli Tepe had anything to do with the rise of religion. It could have simply been a religious center for a small group of people who lived in the area. There are also theories that there were multiple groups of people who built the site. This would make sense because it was occupied for so long. Over the centuries, many groups of people could have come together and added to the site. This would also explain why there doesn't seem to be a central authority that built the site. Unlike the Egyptian pyramids or the Roman Colosseum, it doesn't appear that there was a king or emperor who commissioned the construction of the temple. Instead, it looks like the people of Göbekli Tepe worked together to build it. This would mean that the concept of working together likely developed before writing did. We know that writing developed independently in several societies. So maybe cooperation was one of the first things that humans learned to do before settling down. Of course, this is all speculation. Maybe we'll find evidence one day that will help us learn more about the people of Göbekli Tepe. We do know that these people were advanced beyond our wildest imaginations. Take a moment to look at the pillars that they built. Imagine trying to carve a T-Rex and a spiral staircase at the same time. It would be extremely difficult. Yet these people did it over 11,000 years ago. We also have to consider that they would have had to cut down huge pieces of limestone. Then they had to drag them to the building site. Finally, they had to arrange them in a way that made sense. This leads many archaeologists to wonder how these people came up with such advanced ideas. After all, they didn't have the internet or Google to get inspiration from. We can assume that they probably sat around and shared stories while looking at the stars. Maybe they used the patterns of the stars to inspire the patterns they carved into the pillars. Or maybe they observed animals and tried to recreate them. Whatever the case may be, they created some truly remarkable works of art. And to think that they lived during a time when humans were supposed to be uncivilized is truly mind-blowing. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think about Göbekli Tepe? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.